Welcome once again to St. Paul's Church National Historic Site in our series History from St. Paul's, highlighting some of the stories we preserve at the site in Mount Vernon, New York. Today, recounting the life of an extraordinary woman named Rebecca Turner. Her 93 years living near St. Paul's Church illustrate a local journey from slavery to freedom, the continuity of African American life in the vicinity, and the heartening story of a remarkable woman's efforts to sustain herself and family for nearly a century. We first encounter Rebecca in the historical record in 1806 through the terminology of the day the Eastchester Book of the Colored People, giving birth to a daughter named Mary. 25 at the time, Rebecca was enslaved to a local family in Westchester County, about 20 miles north of New York City. 7 years earlier, influenced partly by the ideals of the American Revolution, New York had passed a gradual emancipation law. It granted freedom to all children born to an enslaved mother upon reaching maturity. The registration of Mary's birth to Rebecca was part of the legal requirement of maintaining a log of such children. In 1810, Rebecca was manumitted, released from enslavement, with the assistance of Benjamin Turner. He was a free African-American man who was Rebecca's husband and had migrated to the area from southern Westchester County, where his family had years earlier been enslaved. Rebecca's freedom corresponded with a pattern of granting freedom to the enslaved as the culmination of bondage approached in New York. In 1810, the Turners took up residence on a small parcel of land at the southeastern edge of the St. Paul's property. Initially guests, within a short time they erected a cabin and began to pay taxes as landowners. They developed a farm on the banks of Eastchester Creek and raised a family. They lived within the racially segregated restrictions of the northern states in the decades before the Civil War. But the Turners developed a level of respect in the community that was unusual for African Americans at a time of considerable prejudice. Benjamin Turner held an official position with the town. He served as assistant pounder. He confiscated and held stray animals on the Turner property that had been roaming around the village. This was an important public trust in early America. On behalf of the town, Ben collected fines before releasing the animal to the proper owner. Rebecca eventually bore 6 children, 4 girls, 2 boys, and employed much of her personal resources and time raising the youngsters. They attended local public schools, which operated on an integrated basis. For some time, the family worshiped at St. Paul's Church, located about 100 yards from their home. Records show 4 of the Turner children attending a racially segregated Sunday school in 1822. They would have sat in the church gallery, reserved for parishioners who did not purchase private pew boxes. In other ways, the Episcopal Church probably did not meet their spiritual needs or expectations of equality within the religious community. They were not listed as congregants in 1846. Instead, the family had joined other local African Americans to found a separate nearby black Protestant church in the mid-1830s. By then, Rebecca was in her 50s. The new church was called Asbury Methodist Church. This development paralleled the establishment of separate black houses of worship across the North in the early 1800s. Rebecca's important role on the farm structured her daily existence, formed by the rural rhythms of a pre-industrial time. The Turners' level of agricultural production placed them on a subsistence level, with Ben and Rebecca managing and supervising their children in cultivating a vegetable garden, harvesting fruit trees, raising chickens and livestock, and gathering saute from the meadow behind the St. Paul Cemetery for their animals. In years of good harvest, some of their agricultural surplus was sold for profit to the New York City markets through local networks. Additionally, the family would have gathered oysters, fish, and clams from the nearby creek. Ben Turner died in the mid-1830s, and Rebecca emerged as a property owner and responsible taxpayer of the family land for the next 40 years, a highly unusual status for an African-American woman in New York before the Civil War. In 1855, for instance, her property was valued at $200, a modest holding in relation to other Eastchester possessions, but fully owned and unencumbered by debt. Through necessity, she developed into the family's chief breadwinner. She supplemented her livelihood by cooking at an inn and tavern called Guyon's around the corner from St. Paul's. More importantly, Rebecca emerged as a businesswoman. She took advantage of the location of her land, abutting the creek, to establish a laundry business involving the whole family. They did wash for many people living in their section of the town in a pre-industrial time when clothes were cleaned by hand. There is, for instance, a surviving 1858 receipt when Rebecca was 77 that records payment of $7.50 for washing performed for the St. Paul's minister, William S. Coffey. It was probably one of many business records, but the only remaining documentation. While no physical image or description has survived, Rebecca obviously had a strong, healthy constitution, living into her 10th decade, well beyond life expectancy in the 19th century. Community recollections of the Turners, passed down orally and gathered years later, were very positive with an emphasis on family, which was a constant theme of Rebecca's life. A matriarchal figure, she provided shelter at the homestead for son-in-law Samuel Nelson and his two girls, Rebecca's granddaughters, following the death in 1860 of their mother, Rebecca's daughter Sarah. Nelson, who may have been a runaway slave, had arrived in the area around 1830. He earned pay as a gravedigger at St. Paul's. He continued living with his mother-in-law, Rebecca, through his death in 1867 at age 70, when he was buried in the St. Paul's Cemetery. Rebecca's widowed daughter Mary, the girl born in 1806, also returned to the family farm under Rebecca's aegis. Rebecca died 93 years old on March 27, 1874. Interment followed 3 days later in the St. Paul's Cemetery. Her intrinsic understanding of the significance of family and land was obviously imparted to her children. Her daughter, and eventually her granddaughters, stubbornly retained the homestead into the 1930s, holding out against changes in the composition of the area and increasing property taxes. This reflects 3 generations of a family's life in the shadows of the church. In the early 21st century, her local memory was solidified with the renaming of a Mount Vernon elementary school in her honor. Please join us again next week for more history from St. Paul's.